Didn't take me a long time to realize that there were some pretty deep inefficiencies that were plaguing independent food producers in this country, namely in the meat side of things. And a lot of it was stemming from the very intermediated supply chain that sat between them and the market. For the ranch that I was working on, there was 7 layers of distribution that sat between them and the end consumer of their product. And coming from a tech background, I started to scratch my head and wonder, what kind of infrastructure would we need to shorten the supply chain here and connect these producers more directly with market?
All right, well, thanks for tuning in to the Wisenetix Podcast. My name is Daryl. I'm your host this time, and with me, I've got Henry Arrowood, who's the CEO and founder of Farmshare. Henry, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Daryl. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about Farmshare.
Yeah. First and foremost, I got to admit that I am not of an ag background whatsoever, despite the name of my company and the space that we play in. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and really had little exposure to the ag world growing up. Went to school down in Miami, moved out to Colorado after college, and then my job took me out to California, and I worked in the tech sector for about 7 years before starting Farmshare. Most recently, I was working at Square, and during the pandemic, my fiance and I we started watching the show Yellowstone, and we thought to ourselves, well, hell, that lifestyle looks a lot better than what we're living here in San Francisco. Why don't we go try that out for a bit? And everything was remote at that time. So we decided to pack our bags, and we moved out to Montana, and we found ourselves on a 7th generation beef cattle operation in Wilsaw, Montana, in the Shields Valley, town of 150 people. And I got to live my Yellowstone life and kept my tech job. But before and after work, I basically served as a ranch hand on this cow calf operation. And I did everything from calving to rolling out hay bales to branding and everything in between. And it was really my first exposure into the ag world. Didn't take me a long time to realize that there were some pretty deep inefficiencies that were plaguing independent food producers in this country, namely in the meat side of things. And a lot of it was stemming from the very intermediated supply chain that sat between them and the market. For the ranch that I was working on, there was 7 layers of distribution that sat between them and the end consumer of their product. And coming from a tech background, I started to scratch my head and wonder, what kind of infrastructure would we need to shorten the supply chain here and connect these producers more directly with market? And so that was really the central question that I set out to solve with Farmshare. For the past 2 years, we have been building tools for independent farmers and ranchers and now meat processors all across the country to help them be more competitive in market. If you look at the industry of meat in this country today, it's a $200 billion market, of which 85% is consolidated with just a few packers. In the beef industry, there's 4 companies that control 85% of all of the meat that's produced and distributed in this country. And as a result, it's created quite a financially unfair situation for producers, and it's also squeezed out a lot of small family farms. And so the industry has been, really consolidated to an untenable level. And we're seeing like the death of the American family farm, which is really sad because, consumers are actually looking for something completely different than what they're getting at the grocery store. Consumers are looking for transparency, traceability, and connection to where their food is coming from. They're not looking for mystery meat from Walmart or Costco. They want to know, where is this product coming from? What's the provenance? Is it healthy? Is it responsible? And there's just such a gap between, the producer and the consumer today that there's so little insight that the consumer has when buying their meat. We're fundamentally changing that. We are creating direct to market opportunities for producers to connect with consumers, with restaurants, with grocery stores, and empowering an entirely new channel of independent meat production and distribution to market. And we're having a hell of a fun time doing it, Daryl.
That's kind of a cool story. So my wife loves Yellowstone, and by virtue, I too love Yellowstone. And
Good
so
man, good husband.
we've talked a bit about it, and she really loves Highland cows.
Mhm.
They've got much better hair than I do.
Although where you are down in Florida, you'd probably be looking at Brahman cattle and not Highland.
Yes, yes, they might. They would not like the. It's like, you've been here in Miami. You see like someone walking a husky, and you're like, man, that dog's got to be going through hell. That
Yeah,
would be a Highland cow here.
that's for sure.
And you said something really cool that I really like, because I don't come from an ag background either. I come from a tech background, but before that, I was actually a chef tournat for some fine dining restaurants in Orlando. And so Providence and like where did the animal come from, how was it treated, who was the farmer was really important to me, and the food and beverage team at the restaurant. It was a big part of the menu.
For sure, and I mean, it's not something that a lot of, chefs have the ability to actually express preference on, right? You have, US Foods or Cisco come in to drop off, your ingredients on a daily basis. Where are the alternatives in the market, right?
Yeah,
You say you wanna have, like, a more premium beef product, alright, great, but where are you buying it from? And so, what we've done to date has been really exploiting the direct to consumer channel, but we know that the same desire for transparency and traceability exists with a chef, like you mentioned. So how do we start to take what we've been able to build on the direct to consumer channel and start to integrate that into other distribution and channels as well? Local restaurants, independent grocers, right? These wholesale buyers don't necessarily have optionality in where they're sourcing today. They source from the big guys because the big guys are all that's existing.
you said something about Cisco, which makes me laugh because I always tell my wife, because she's got I hope she doesn't listen to this, a basic palate. And so and so I'm like, you just like Cisco products.
Yeah,
She's like, so what? So I
yeah.
and she worked in restaurants for a long time, so she kind of gets it. But we're kind of getting off there. But what would you say right now are the top three achievements that either in this current company in Farmshare or overall, and really what did you learn from those?
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, the thing that fires me up and everybody else on our team is the fact that we have been able to provide a lifeline to tens and tens of small family farms. I mean, there's like these are farms that we're on the brink of bankruptcy and insolvency. We work with a lot of other farms that we've been able to not necessarily provide a lifeline to, but completely scale their business and change the unit economics of what they do. That's really exciting. Like that's our
Mhm.
why. That gets us up out of bed in the morning and gets us excited to go to work. So that in itself, I think, is the biggest achievement of what we've done to date. You know, in doing that, I think one of the achievements that, goes hand in hand is our ability to continue to be dynamic, flexible, and iterate in this space. And when we came into this, we were doing something entirely different. When we first came into this business, the immediate opportunity that I saw in the first place that we productized was in creating like an online farmers market. How could we go out there and create like Etsy for farmers and ranchers? Now, what we're doing today and how we've evolved the business, it's an entirely different solution, but it's affecting change towards the same problem. And one of the biggest things that I've learned, through this entire process is you got to be rigid about the problem that you're solving, but you have to be flexible in the solution. And we've done a really good job at doing that. We have continued to evolve our business to meet the needs of the market, to meet the needs of our customers, but always staying very clear on our North Star and why we're doing what we're doing. And I think that that's really important. And I think that a lot of founders, have to learn that lesson the hard way. And I hope they do because, if you become too, you become too ingrained in the solution and it becomes your baby and you're willing to die on that hill, well your company is going to die and you're never going to be able to affect change towards the problem you set out to affect change towards. So through all of that, I think we've done a really good job at being nimble, being reactive, and continuing to iterate our products to meet the needs of the market and how we could move the needle towards a different future that we have in mind.
That's awesome. I love the part about you know dying on the hill of the solution and being flexible.
Hmm.
I think we see that in everything, like in our relationships and business itself,
Sure.
where the solution to the problem is important. But sometimes you gotta, the path's blocked. And as you said, you've got to find the way to get there. And it might not be the way you envision. It certainly hasn't been for most of the big problems that I've gone through. I'm sure probably the same for you.
Definitely.
Awesome. So, what are the challenges that you're facing right now in terms of like marketing and communication over with Farmshare?
One of the biggest issues that plagues the industry of agriculture, is the way that things have always been done. The biggest threat to farming, to ranching, is the way that things have always been done. And it's toxic on sort of two levels. One, the people in charge are resistant to change. And as a result, we have an industry that is lagging technologically, by 20, 30 years compared to other industries. But the other sort of byproduct of that mentality is it's really dissuading to the next generation to want to embark on this sort of career path. If they feel that their voice is not heard and they don't have the opportunity to bring new ideas to the table, well, it doesn't become a very exciting prospect to bring fresh minds into agriculture. And like, that's a big problem right now. The average age of the US farmer is 65 years old. Like, that's not sustainable. We need new minds to come into this space and help to rethink the future of agriculture. So I hope that that's something that will change. It certainly requires an immense amount of education and being willing to have like an open dialogue and discourse. And it's something that we work on a lot. I mean, I spend a lot of time out there on the road, going to conferences, going to conventions, meeting with farmers. And a lot of times, they are resistant to what we're doing at the beginning. And we just have to continue to sort of push our message forward that, listen, like, if we want to, reclaim fair financials for farmers, we gotta create autonomy for farmers in this country. We're way too dependent on the big guys right now, and this extremely like segmented structure that we've built in this country isn't working for us. And so that's a big problem that we run into on a day-to-day basis. And like I said, we're doing our small part to change it, but I think it requires sort of an industry shift in the way that we think about the future of the space.
Yeah, I would almost say that's agriculture in general, but especially in the beef space. Even other, beef ranchers that I've spoken to or companies that work with beef ranchers have said the same thing: is that beef's 20, 30 years behind as far as technology goes, and that it's harder and harder to find people to come even work there, even as ranch hands.
Yeah.
Um, so that you guys are doing your small part to help change that. And I know you're on the road doing the road show almost 24/7. It feels like.
Yeah. 100%.
I love that you said that. So how are you tackling that in farm share right now? You said you're going out, you're doing a little education while you're doing the road shows. Are there any other initiatives that you're doing to kind of bring education or awareness across that segment or across the whole segment?
Yeah, I mean, we're evolving like our go to market strategy a little bit here. I mean, when we started the company, we were really focused on like direct farm sales, going out to meat farms all over the country, and cold call them, cold email them, and like pursue this very like one to one relationship in our sales motion. And that can be somewhat ineffective because producers don't necessarily have a lot of time on their computer. They're always busy. Never is a good time to chat. They're resistant to, somebody coming and, in their mind selling them snake oil. So we've had to like sort of adopt what we're doing. And what we're now focusing on is much more of a top-down distribution model. Where's like the pinch in the supply chain that all of our, producers are funneling up to. And if you look at the meat industry, like, no one farmer or rancher in this country has a meat product. They have an animal. To get a meat product, they have to be going to a processor. And so what we're doing now is we're really, evolving our technology to be embeddable at the processor level. when you look at the state of the processing landscape, as I mentioned, four companies in beef control 85% of all of the meat that's processed in this country. The other 15%, the long tail, well, that 15% is fragmented through 8,000, USDA processors throughout this country. Um, they need technology. If they're going to be competitive with the Cargills and the Tysons of the world, they need to have operational software that can help them gain an edge. They need to have shared infrastructure that they can rely upon for economically viable price points. Like that is what we're bringing to the market. And when we do that, it gives us the top down distribution. It gives us access into all of those producers that funnel up into that processor. It's a lot easier for us to go out there and strike up relationships with 8,000 producers versus, a few 100,000 farmers and ranchers that are, our end target. And so that's kind of, based off of some of the learnings, that's the new sort of go to market motion that we're pursuing. And it comes back to like, it's such a trust based, relationship based industry. If we can embed ourselves with a trusted intermediary, an existing relationship, we have much better like exposure and access into our end customers than if we're just to go out there cold, without any prior contact.
Yeah, the warm connection is the key.
It's the key.
That's the key. That's an interesting go to market, and I'd have to say it's ingenious, man.
We hope so. I mean, we haven't necessarily proven it yet. We're about a few weeks, about 2 weeks out from rolling out our pilot program. We've got 7 processors that we're piloting this program with across the country. They're really excited about it. I mean, the early feedback that we have gotten from processors, who are interested in what we're bringing to the table, and mind you, it's not overly complicated sort of solutioning that we're bringing them. It's basic blocking and tackling to really do two things: increase like the throughput utilization of the plant by creating better operations, and two, reduce the amount of office administration that they're doing. Right, they're all short on labor. They don't want to be manning the phones, they don't want to be emailing customers, they don't want to be dealing with paper cut sheets. So we went out there and we said like, okay, where's the friction that exists like in this, in the process for the independent processors today? Um, 3 things that we're delivering with this pilot program. One, it's online scheduling. Like I'm sure you're familiar with like Calendly, right? We're creating
Yeah.
Calendly for meat processing, right? Like I'm a producer, right? I've got 10 head of cattle that I need to get, processed. Rather than playing phone tag 5 times with my local processor to get a slot, that they're going to then, go to their paper calendar in their office and like write down, why don't we just automate this entire thing? So any time of day, whenever it comes to mind that I need to, book some kill slots, I can do it. And I have an updated central repository, single source of truth that I can rely on. So that's number one. Number two, it's cut sheet standardization, right? All of these small, processors today, they have tons of like pieces of paper, right? With like scribbled notes as to, okay, what are we doing with the 4 quarters of this cow? Who are the customers? What does that customer want? Now I've got to play phone tag not only with the producer who's dropping off the animal, but maybe the restaurant group who's buying the beef, right? Like let's get rid of all that. Let's automate that. Let's streamline the communication. Let's bring everybody into the same place. And the third component that dovetails into that is, how do we automate the communication with all of the stakeholders, right? There's a producer, there's a processor, there's a buyer, right? We don't need to have this, love triangle of calls back and forth between everybody and everybody's playing phone tag. Like, how can we create, a transparency and communication throughout the entire supply chain so everybody's on the same page? So we're real excited about that. And again, to me, it doesn't seem like an entirely novel thing to do, but nobody's doing it today. And it's just representative of like how far behind this industry is in terms of technology. Simple things that we can do like this. And this is what we'll continue to do. Like, where's the problem? Let's pick it off, let's tackle it, and let's provide value to our customer. Like, we are doing that today, and we will continue to do that for this industry.
I'm excited about that. I mean, that sounds awesome. I'd be excited if I was a processor, even more so like a farmer, or even, say somebody took over for their dad who was the rancher and now has 8 that have got to go. That makes it so much easier. And I'm starting to see that kind of technology enter into ag and swine. Obviously you're doing it in beef right now. Stuff that I guess where we come from in tech has been available for 10, 15 years. We're just kind of used to it.
Daryl, it's not isolated to beef, right? Like
Yeah.
this software for the the independent like meat lockers, like it's we can use it for all species, right? We can use it for different like in like certification levels. We can use
Wow.
it for USDA, we can use it for custom exempt, we can use it for state inspected. We can use it for, cattle, we can use it for hogs, we can use it for venison. And then we can actually like get more granular with it. Like there's such a difference for a processor if they're taking in like a coal calf or they're taking in like a fat cow. Like if
Hmm.
we can provide more of that data, it totally changes the way that the operations of their plant, works, right?
Wow.
Because one cow is not the same across the board. You could be taking
Right.
in a hanging weight of a 400-pound coal calf or like a 1,300-pound fat cow, right?
Hmm.
That's an entirely different process for the team of a kill plant. Like becoming a little bit more refined in the strategy and the structure and the methodology, we can in turn increase the operational efficiency of these plants.
Sure. That's awesome. And which is oddly a little similar to what's happening in feed mills as well,
Mhm.
using some of these data driven things to keep the mill more efficient because time is money, as they say.
That's right.
So I'm excited about. I'm going to be following that. We'll have to touch base in a few months. I'd love to hear more about where that pilot is going. Um, a little bit about you though. What would you say is the most important personality trait or even strength to be in your position?
It's the ability to admit when you are wrong and when something's not going right. Right, it goes back to that being rigid about the problem, flexible about the solution. Um, That's like really hard to do because on the one hand, to be like a founder, you've got to have like the utmost conviction and confidence in yourself. It's the table stakes. Nobody who doesn't have those qualities is ever going to be able to take the leap of faith and like try and build something that's never been built before. But to have that set of qualities and also the recognition that you are going to be wrong sometime and being able to like interpret data and feedback in a way that balances, the reality of your circumstance with the conviction that you have in the idea you're pursuing. I think that that's really hard to do. It's something that I'm always working on and trying to get better. My number one like KPI for myself is like rate of experimentation. Like how many experiments can I test, whether, internally, externally, with specific people on my team, with specific parts of our company. Like I think that, being extremely quick to learn is really important. And if I think honestly about, our company, like we've had many iterations on a particular product, but we have in the short time that we've been in business, 2 years, gone through three major pivots. I mean, that's really hard to do. You basically have to like, you know, muster up the gumption yourself and then also convince your entire team that like, hey, what we were doing was wrong. Here's why, and this is why we're course correcting. Like that's really hard. So it's one recognizing like when you are wrong and being able like to course correct, but two, being able to like rally the troops around that. One mentor told me that there's a really clear and fine distinction between good founders and bad founders, and it usually comes in the difference between confidence and arrogance. And how he explained it to me was like, arrogance is when you're pursuing an idea and you don't listen to any of the data points that other people are sharing with you and you just keep your head down and keep on going. Confidence is, staying the course but internalizing data points that you're hearing and being able to make a judgment call on how you use those data points, to pivot. And I think that, having the confidence is really key.
I'd say you're pretty dead on the money there. I mean, as the founder, not only are you the visionary for the company, you're the one who's holding the sales as well. And do you listen to the guys who are telling you, hey, wind's going this way, we need to sail with the wind, or are you going to go against it and be arrogant, as your mentor said? Um, and I see my boss Marcio, who's a founder as well, kind of go through similar things where you mentioned you've done a few pivots, we've done a few pivots. It's tough, right? But the confidence and the belief in your vision is what allows you to rally the troops. And I'm sure that you've got that hand in spades. So that's awesome. You mentioned that learning's a big thing, and all of that stuff. Is there another lesson that you've been taught, maybe in this job or in the past in school, you know, grandpa, that you think everybody should learn at some point in their life?
I mean, one that we had to deal with just as recently as like last week is you got to make the hard right over the easy wrong. And that was actually a lesson imparted upon me by the head of my lower school when I was probably in like fifth or sixth grade. Um, when it comes to business, it's sometimes so easy to get excited about, what's on the horizon. And in this particular circumstance that we had to, implement this lesson a few weeks ago, we have like some new products that we're working on. The whole engineering team is working on that everybody's just so excited for because the early indicators have been just overwhelmingly positive, and there's a lot of big dollar signs attached to the development and the commercialization of this product. But then we had an issue go wrong with a sort of more legacy product that was already in the hands of our customers. Mind you, that product represented like pennies on the dollar compared to the technology that the team was heads down on. And I had to make the really hard decision that we were going to pause our efforts developing this product that was representative of a heck of a lot more revenue than what the legacy product we needed to fix was. But I knew that
Mhm.
our reputation in this business was everything. Like, as we said, word travels fast. It's such a trust-based, relationship-based industry that we couldn't afford to suffer a black eye at this point in time. And even if we had to, press pause and divert our development efforts from something that everybody was so excited about, investors, customers, team, it was the hard right over the easy wrong. We had to do it. We had to be there for our customers. We had to make them right, even if it came at the expense of the company. And so I think that's a really hard lesson to learn, but one that has been extremely formative throughout my life and my career.
And I love the way that that's formed, the hard right over the easy wrong. I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna steal it.
You can thank Paul Herman, who was the head of the lower school at the school I went to for elementary.
I will. I'll send them a little check for TM. Thank you. Um, it's so true though, right? It's really easy to chase the dollars in that situation, right? But yeah, in this industry, you, at worst or at best, it's a black eye. At worst, it's a decapitation. You
100%.
know?
100%. It could be the end.
Yeah, it could be the end. So sometimes the long shot's the better shot, even if it's a longer journey.
Yep.
It's a really cool saying. I love it. Kind of closing up here since we're running up on time, but what's another job you'd like to try? If you weren't doing what you were doing now, magic wand, what would you do?
I'd be a rancher.
There you go.
I mean, listen, at the end of the day, like I'm still waiting to be John Dutton. Like that's the goal. But the reality is John Dutton don't just materialize out of nowhere. You need some capital to have an operation like that. And I don't know that like realistically would ever want to have an operation like that. But listen, at the end of the day, I'm here in an office all day long, sitting behind a computer, and I'm helping people that I'm so inspired by.
Right.
The best people I think this country has. I think that they're the backbone of the American dream. I want to be part of that. Like I really do. I want to have my own operation. Like it's sometimes tough when I'm, talking with, people like who are on the combine or who are out on their horse rounding up cattle. And, I'm here in the office, and I'm able to do it because it's justified. And I know that I'm serving a greater cause here. But when this is all said and done, and when Farmshare becomes a multi-billion-dollar company, um, I hope that, I can sort of leave the computer behind, and I can spend time with my family, out on a ranch. I want to practice what I preach here. My dream is to become a customer of Farmshare.
There you go. You want to promote yourself to customer eventually. Job's done, customer.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. You kind of did that a little bit, right? When you moved up there originally, and
For sure. And I'm just trying to get back there. I'm doing whatever I can to get back there.
that's awesome. Do you ever stop by that ranch ever and just like get a weekend in or something like that? Just to
100%.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually become like very good friends. Like I went to their wedding, they're coming to my wedding. I spend time up there a lot. They're now a customer of Farmshare. Like, we're very close friends. Spending time up in the Shields Valley of Montana is, I think, one of my favorite places on earth. And so I try to get up there whenever I can.
Awesome. My wife's done some hiking there, and it is beautiful.
Spectacular.
Beautiful. I'm a little jealous because I see iguanas and invasive lizards all day long. So I personally like asking this, so I'm actually really glad you chose this question, because I base a lot of what I read and like educate myself with on this. But what is one podcast or a resource about business marketing, could be a book even, that you'd recommend to the audience?
Okay, for me personally, and I don't know how much this will resonate with the audience, but for me personally, the single most influential, piece of content that I consume week in and week out is a podcast called the All In Podcast. It's hosted by Chamath Palihapitiya, David Sachs, David Freeberg, and Jason Calacanis. And what I think is really interesting about it is I think that they deliver news across many different sectors in a very unspun way. They're all people of tremendous power, and so they have access to information that I don't think the everyman necessarily does. But they deliver it in a more unbiased and straightforward perspective than anybody has from any mainstream outlets. And I just think that the work that they're doing is really important. I mean, they're all extremely successful people in their own right, and they've taken the time to carve out an hour or more of their week every week to just have like a really like unbiased conversation. And they're all extremely intellectually curious and honest. And I really appreciate the work that they're doing, and it in many ways like informs a lot of my thinking in the world. And they touch everything from politics to current affairs to business to the economy. And I just think if there's like one thing that I only have time to consume on a week in, week out basis to stay informed, that's where I'm going.
I quite literally just added it to my Spotify follow list.
There you go.
So awesome. I appreciate that. I mean, that sounds awesome. I'm a big fan of unbiased news, which is hard to come across these days.
Hard to come by these days.
Very hard to come by. There's always a side or agenda in everything, especially out of, I guess you could say, the big three. But it's interesting that they kind of talk about everying. I'm going to listen after we finish here. I'm going to listen to one and
There
see
you
how
go.
it's.
Let me know how you like it.
I will. Just kind of wrapping up here. What is, where can our listeners find you online personally, Henry? And then also importantly, where could they find Farmshare?
Main way to connect with me is LinkedIn is great. So Henry Arrowood on LinkedIn. Also feel free to send me an email. It's henry@farmshare.co. And then if people are curious to learn more about Farmshare, I direct them to farmshare.co.
Awesome. I'm actually looking at some brisket that from there. I might end up ordering it. I still have my pit that I built up for Noche Buena down here in Miami for the whole hog.
That's awesome.
Might have to do that.
We would love to have you as a customer, Daryl.
You know what? I'll make it happen. I'll see if I can put it on the company.
There you go.
Well, Henry, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, man.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, and everyone, thanks for listening. Again, this is the Wisenetix Podcast, and we'll see you next time.